everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of the Binance New Zealand Ask Me Anything series. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ben Rose, General Manager for Binance New Zealand, and today we are delighted to have Tim Harper from NFT studio Glorious join us to chat about all things NFT and help us answer some of the questions that we had all of you submit. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Ben. I didn't realize I'm the first. I feel quite privileged. Thank you.
You're inaugural. So Tim, why don't we kick off with some introductions? All right. So look, you've got a long history in the creative space with some amazing projects like the Great New Zealand Songbook and the Great New Zealand Cookbook, and you're a passionate art collector. So can you give us a quick overview of, I suppose, the journey that you took to founding Glorious and how it all came to be?
I can. Yeah, thanks, Ben. It's funny. In some ways, I'm the least likely person to be sitting here in the NFT space on a Binance sort of AMA. So it's not lost on me because my whole career up to date has been as a creative director and art director, firstly as a graphic designer. And I guess those are my favorite subjects. That's my favorite place. And so you mentioned the Great New Zealand Songbook and the Great New Zealand Cookbook. Those were two productions that I co-produced with Murray Tom, who's been my long-term creative partner and also a co-founder of Glorious. And I think to understand us and why we probably founded Glorious is probably to understand our heart behind those projects, because there's a lot of similarities. The Songbook asked 80 of New Zealand's finest songwriters, tell us why you wrote this particular song and what it meant to you. Tell us about the lyrics. And we pictorially kind of brought that to life. So you would have the music that you could listen to, and then you could read the lyrics and look at these kind of incredible images at the same time. Funnily enough, sort of an NFT waiting to happen. I just didn't know. That was 2009. The songbooks, there was a New Zealand one, there was an Australian one. We went on to do American and British ones before the kind of physical product market, I guess music retail around the world shut down. I remember the Tower Records in London, the big sort of padlocks on there when I was up visiting with Universal Music up there. And it was just so sad. And I came home and Murray, fully optimistic, he said, let's pivot, chefs are the new rock stars. And so we moved to cooking. And again, that time it was 80 of New Zealand's cooks, chefs and bakers. What food do you cook for the people you love? So this whole idea of storytelling and passing on sort of these are sort of legacy elements, I guess you could sort of start to see in music and food. And it was sort of with that lens that I first learned about NFTs. It was March last year. I found myself on a Zoom call with Murray was on the call. Scott McLeaver, who's a partner at PwC. We call him our friendly kind of crypto geek. He advises them in that space. And particularly, he's just a genius on all things Web3 and NFTs and the blockchain. And then Dan Carter, All Black Dan Carter, who we went to the same high school, Christchurch Boys High School, which was pretty cool. But kind of like, wow, this is pretty cool. On a Zoom call with Dan, quickly tidied the living room, behind me, got it all looking good. And we had just this fascinating hour, I remember, where Scott really was just giving us the 101 on what NFTs were and blockchains were. And from my sort of art lens, I was thinking about it entirely from the artists themselves. This idea that there's this new digital economy where a digital asset can actually have provenance. You can actually prove that it came from the artist. And not only that, it's authentic because it lives on the blockchain, which is sort of immutable, so you can't change it. So there's this lovely sort of story that comes in through that. And then there's smart contract and the secondary royalty. This idea that an artist can actually make a living off these royalties and then that could be passed on to their children and so forth was, needless to say, the light bulb went off quite quickly. And I remember getting off that call actually and emailing Dick Frizzell, New Zealand artist Dick Frizzell. And I said, Dick, I need a high-res version of Mickey to Tiki. Don't ask me any questions. I'll come and see you Thursday. And I spent the week animating that work. Dick emailed back within 5 seconds and said, here you go, Tim, will this do? And I animated the work, not for the purpose of making our first NFT, but just to go back to him and say, Dick, you've explored paint, talk about a master of form. You've worked across so many aspects of art. Have you looked at sort of animation? He said, Tim, I studied advertising. That was my bread and butter back in the day. Yeah. So and I got the sense very quickly from him that he was so interested in exploring the space. And as we spoke to more artists, Lisa Rayhana, Ruben Patterson, Carl Moore, all these fabulous New Zealand artists, they were so intrigued by the space. I think particularly those who worked in digital. If you're a digital artist, you sell your work on a hard drive. I buy it, and I just there's a trust factor that has to take place between the artist and myself. I have to trust that this is the only hard drive, or there's 5 hard drives, whatever the edition might be, and that someone didn't copy it for their mother for Mother's Day or something to that effect. So the fact that you could actually have this sort of provenance and proof that this was the original digital file, for those artists in particular, I think it was incredibly exciting. And so we were so buoyed by that response. And we knew quite quickly, and I think Murray and I, we've always worked with the best of the best. Dan Carter is the best of the best, and he understands legacy probably better than anyone. And so you've got to remember, this was all happening in the context of, this is 2 weeks pre-Beeple. The big Beeple JPEG that sold for Christie's for 69 million. That kind of we didn't even know what to do with that information, to be perfectly honest. You've got that on one end, and then you've got these large collections of sort of peer-to-peer profile pics at P2P, and you don't really know quite what to do. But I realized that, look, if we stay in the fine art space to start with, the premium end marketplace, I think we're in a safe haven. I think while we're all exploring this space, I think we can dip our toe in that. And I think that changed very quickly from just fine art into these sort of legacy brands once we got connected to the Nelson Mandela Foundation, which we're so proud to have partnered with. And we've got that release coming out early next year, which is so exciting. But again, it sort of upped the level. And all of a sudden we were talking about preserving legacy. The job of an estate like the Mandela Foundation is to really pass on information from one generation to the next, uphold those values of Madiba. And that's what you can do with sort of NFT technology. And I use that because the NFT itself, we think of it as art, but it could be like a digital container. It can kind of have whatever you want in it. It's a token that points to something, but a lot of it can have real world utility as well. And so we were learning as we were going. I remember that meeting with the Mandela Foundation. They're all academics. They've all got PhDs. And I remember getting on a Zoom call. I think I knew about blockchain and NFTs for about 2 weeks. And I was on this Zoom call answering the 101 going, I don't actually know, but I think it could be this. From what and I think it was a really interesting part for us. So very quickly, glorious, the definition of glorious, really kind of defines who we're going after. We knew that artists were going to want to explore this space. We knew that legacy brands were wanting to explore this space. If we're going to immortalize content forever, let's make sure it's glorious. And let's also make sure it's a glorious experience for the customer. Because up until this point, I had struggled with, I had bought Bitcoin back in 2017, like everybody else, couldn't handle the roller coaster of it. The experience of buying that Bitcoin was torturous. And, I knew that, what I didn't know was how long it was going to take, I guess, for us for the mainstream to sort of adopt this. In many ways, we were kind of here. The market's appetite was probably back here, and then the tech was sort of down here, and even when we launched Glorious, back in March, it's such early days, I guess, in the space. But we've figured that, what artists are looking for is a creative studio that they can work with. So that's what we are first and foremost. We work with the artists to create amazing digital content that they would want to sell. But then we have our primary marketplace, which is kind of a curated space, I guess. Only glorious NFTs or works are sold on that marketplace. And you can do that from your mobile phone. And you can pay by credit card with that. But it has all the security of the decentralized space. So it's a beautiful piece of technology that we've spent a very long time building. But I think we're in this for the long run. And, so it's such a fascinating time to be sitting here with you right now. And the educational journey that we see in front of us, but incredibly exciting.
Why don't we kick off with some questions from our users? They're dying to ask you a few questions. So look, the first one is, how is the experience of buying an NFT and owning an NFT from Glorious different to buying one from another marketplace?
A great question. I think actually that follows on quite well from what I was just describing, which was when we first launched Glorious. Like most other NFT trading platforms, you have to have a Chrome browser on your laptop. There's often an extension that you have to add, a wallet extension. Or a MetaMask wallet or whatever it might be if you're buying from OpenSea. These are all quite normal to a lot of Web3 natives, but to those that have never entered the space before, it's very, very confusing. Even just buying crypto, as you would know, and you guys have got a beautiful user experience, which is really what you've tried to do, because you're trying to attract this mainstream market. We didn't. That wasn't really there. These are new pieces of. This is new tech that's sort of coming through. These new user experiences. So currently, I believe that we're the only marketplace that you can actually go on your phone right now and purchase an NFT just with your credit card by signing up with a username and login. And we take care of the 12-word seed phrase in a really unique way. It's still entirely guaranteed and secure, but it's a far more seamless user experience. So again, all of this has been designed with the mainstream audience in mind, which is to try and remove those hurdles as much as possible. So it doesn't even really feel like a crypto experience, I think. It's really a Web 2 experience. We started with a Web3 experience, and we helped people, I call it through the 18-step program. That's basically what it was, to get people from when they first heard about us to get an NFT in their wallet. And it was hard work, They were game and they came on the journey with us, and, we tried to make it as easy as we could for people. But now we have this experience which is just so seamless. And what we're working on is actually for the wallet, which holds all your NFTs, to actually sync with your smart TV. And we've partnered with Samsung, and their frame TVs are just incredible, so that ultimately you can actually just be on your TV, flicking through your Glorious NFTs and choosing which one you want to display on your wall. Because I think that's a really important proposition of Glorious, is that everything we create is worthy of displaying on your wall. Very different from other NFTs in that sense that might just live as a profile pic or something on your phone. Ours are all kind of artworks, even if we're working with Wimbledon, and we were lucky enough to work with Wimbledon last year on their 100 years of centre court, an incredible opportunity for us. And we had so much fun creating these magnificent 10 decades we did, and we did an edition of each, and you had to enter the ballots to be picked, and we had kind of an overwhelming number of people. It was one of the more exciting weeks of our life, but again, optimized to do storytelling, optimized to be these beautiful kind of works of art. So that's
really different approach to lots of the collections where it's about AI generated iterations and thousands of volumes and all that sort of thing. What about the remuneration model? So how much of a secondary market is there for your NFTs, or is that not something you focus on?
Oh, absolutely, is something we focus on too. So the primary marketplace and then the secondary marketplace as well. But the secondary marketplace, all of our NFTs currently, of course, go immediately from the primary to the secondary, and we've had some fantastic sales, particularly on the Wimbledon ones around the secondary marketplace. But again, you can only buy Glorious NFTs through us. So at the moment, that marketplace is entirely our NFTs, and so you'd need to know to come there, I guess, to buy that. And that will always be a part of what we offer. But as of next year, we're interested now in you truly owning your asset. And so if you truly own your asset, Ben, then you should be able to sell that asset beyond maybe just our secondary marketplace. So we'll always be that front door, but we're exploring what that avenue might look like next year, because that is an enormous part of the mechanics of this digital economy. But in saying that, funnily enough, we're kind of motivated to create things so magnificent you don't want to let them go. And that's kind of the art model. Eventually things sell. Things always sell. People find themselves in a situation where they need to. And what's been really lovely for us is seeing in this market, particularly, the value of our NFTs holding and increasing, actually. And again, that's probably speaks to the quality of the work. But
so actually, we've got a question specifically about that. So a question here from one of our users has said, in the recent bear market, lots of NFTs have lost value. Why have your collections not done the same?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I would probably firstly start by saying that our NFTs are kind of grounded in a real world value. These are actual artists who have built a very long career in our and we've got estates that we're working with. We've got brands like Wimbledon, Mandela Foundation, and then obviously all the New Zealand artists. The quality of those artists speaks directly to why our NFTs are holding their value. And you can see that beyond glorious NFTs. Nike are probably the most successful in this space in terms of maintaining and holding their value. And again, it's the trust factor that comes from Nike, but there's also this real world utility that can come in too. I think NFTs, which offer more than just a digital artwork, ones that offer opportunity to get access that you might never have had before, or an experience which is completely unique. Again, all of these can be facilitated through the NFTs. So they're more than just a JPEG or some pixels. They've actually got this utility, and I think those are the ones that are holding value. But you've got to remember too, talk about, I think there were like 1,600 new users to OpenSea last week around the world. We're talking a very, very, very small amount of people. And in terms of trading volumes, we're still in the low millions. So it's a lot of the same people. I think we think that there's this enormous market out there of people actually purchasing NFTs, but it's really so much smaller than we think, and comes back to that sort of educational journey and the ease of adoption and why would people want to own this. I think the why is a big one. And a lot of people are just sitting there on the fence trying to understand what it is exactly that they're buying.
So one of the questions we've had relates to that. So this is from one of our users, from Jake. He says, art-based NFTs are only one of the many real-world applications of NFTs. Are there any plans for Glorious to get involved in other forms? And if so, do you have any bets on what you think might be the next big movers in the NFT space?
Interesting. That's interesting. So yes, I might talk about our founding membership. That answers that directly. I think in terms of next movers in the space, music is the holy grail. I think that would be one to really watch this year. And there's a lot of people, a lot of very smart people, a lot of money trying to crack that code. The idea that artists can be paid direct royalties every time their song streams as one aspect. And then the membership aspect of actually, I remember seeing Coldplay in 98, I think, and here in Auckland, and there were 200 people there. And I think if I'd have the opportunity to support them by becoming a founding member of Coldplay back then, and paid $200 or $500 or whatever it might have been, the fun that journey would have been over the next few years in particular, and obviously they've done incredibly well, so its chances are the asset would have done well too. But I think for us, we knew art was really fascinating, but I think also right from the beginning, with Dan Carter in the conversation, this idea on what could be done within sports. And I think sport's one that we've really tried to sort of focus in on, because sporting events, arguably you're as passionate about sport as you are about art, and collecting things, whether it be tickets or lanyards, the idea that you could actually have something which is a memory of an incredible event. I got to go to Twickenham a few weeks ago. It was absolutely insane. I can't even describe it. It was such a bucket list moment. The idea that I could go to Twickenham and maybe have purchased a membership that allowed me acting. It could have been connected to one of the teams, or it could be connected to the venue. The idea that you could actually belong, and there's sort of like an inner sanctum, an inner circle of membership that has particular access. I think that's extremely interesting and exciting. And I think a lot of these sporting teams and venues, they have this utility at their disposal. NFTs are just such a fantastic way to sort of package it all together. So you're exploring not just fine art, but you're exploring real world experiences. And I don't think most people have got their head around that just yet in terms of NFTs. In fact, the acronym NFT is probably not big enough to describe how they actually function, And I think we'll see that evolve. I think over the next year, you'll see people starting to be more specific. It'll be digital memberships. It'll be digital collections or collectibles, digital artworks. These things make a little bit more sense. This is, of course, before we have digital driver's license and digital passports and digital real estate, ownership. So it's a really fascinating space to watch. I'd expect to see a lot of innovation in this bear market. A lot of people, you're not going to see the silly trading of old art NFTs. I think that kind of day is done, especially if there's a no-name artist. I think you'll always have a market for fine artists. In the same way that you buy a painting, you could have a screen print of that painting, which is a work on paper. They always sell well in the small edition. Glorious has modeled their digital collections to follow that model. So it's priced in the same way. It's effectively a digital collection. And of course, proven authentic on the blockchain. So I would expect those to follow the art trends, but I would expect our membership models, which we're exploring and have a couple coming out next year, to really kind of push the envelope and really advance the conversations and really make the space exciting for people.
Tim, you mentioned the word NFT and the name NFT. We've got a question here about that and that specifically. So the word NFT has got a pretty bad rap recently. Is that something you struggle with, or is it just a matter of time?
It's got a bad rap because it's yeah, I guess it's, in all honesty, I don't feel like I'm in the NFT business in many respects. I feel like we use the technology to sell digital art and work with artists, and to work with organizations to sell and create these memberships. So the technology is so beautiful. It's an insanely beautiful, incredible thing. But the way the media, the educational journey required to understand the space is very difficult. And the media have, done what they've done to sort of articulate what they believe NFTs to be. And of course, you get a lot of noise around that. You get a lot of noise around these collections selling for ludicrous amounts of money. You get a lot of noise around the energy consumption of the blockchain, rightly, although that conversation has entirely changed now, with Ethereum moving to proof of stake. So again, but you still get people who don't quite understand just how quickly that changed, and now it's not really part of the conversation so much. So, but I think people hear NFTs, and look, I know it was Colin's word of the year last year. I think metaverse might be this year, but NFTs, I think, have unfortunately been tarnished with a bit of baggage. But you're really describing the technology, and it's not actually specifically describing what it is you're selling. So I think it needs a rebrand, and I think that's what will happen. I think you'll start seeing people describe things not as an NFT, but as actually what it is you're actually selling. It'll really help move things faster along.
Okay, so something else you've been talking about is international brands you're working with, as well as local artists. So we've had a question here. Does being in New Zealand help or hinder the business?
I think being a Kiwi really helps in this business. I think Kiwis are quite wired. I think we handle startup life quite well. We're multidisciplinarian for starters. I think we don't know what we don't know. So there's this sort of bravado confidence that we sort of secretly, quietly hold, because we're stubborn and we know what we like. And I think we're not afraid to go out and have conversations that ordinarily you would feel very intimidated to have. I know that's certainly been my experience. Mine has been a journey of courage, we've figured out ways to get a Zoom call, and then just be brave enough to turn up and be passionate about what it is that you've got. And so I think that's a really lovely Kiwi trait. I see it right across my whole team and across our shareholders, and, iron sharpens iron. So you all encourage each other in that area. I think, in saying that, well, I think too, we've been on a New Zealand blockchain, the SensNet blockchain, and I think, and because of the carbon neutral aspect of that, and I think that's been really interesting. Many of our participants wouldn't have come on board if we hadn't made that decision. So I think that's really helped us too. That sort of clean, green New Zealand story is expected from us in business, rightly so, and it's something that we knew that we must, proceed with. But I think, time zones, sure. I remember Wimbledon Friday night, 10 p.m. being a regular time for our Zoom calls, So you've got to be willing to do that. And I think I've done 3 or 4 trips up to Europe in the last 6 months. Hey, don't get me wrong, it's amazing, a lot of fun, but that's absolutely where Glorious will be moving next, to have a base up in Europe. And so that's just a practicality of working with different time zones. But on a whole, I think New Zealand as a brand and as a safe space, particularly sort of in and around COVID for the most part, New Zealand was sort of seen as this haven, a place where people would actually want to move to and could work remotely and digitally. I know that's been quite attractive just to people, the way that we operate, and what a wonderful space that we can actually be dealing with all these people via Zoom. It's incredible.
100%. I'm really interested to hear about so your experience of building during the bear market, and you mentioned that earlier. So tell me about why you're doing that.
I think because we believe in the long game of this. We truly do. I truly believe in this new digital economy that we're moving into. And I think I look at my kids, for example, and they're just, all weekend it was raining here in Auckland. They're on Roblox, they're on Minecraft, and the idea that they can live in these worlds and have an avatar and a presence in these worlds and play with their friends in these worlds is so normal to them. If I gave them a $20 voucher, they both love football. If I gave them $20 and said, you can go buy a brand new football, or you can go buy a new skin for your avatar, they're literally not going to think about it. That is just so normal for them. And I think too, I have a son, very creative. He has dyslexia, but I can totally see him thriving in a space where new worlds are created and art is created and can be tradable. And so I think too, the question of, is this new digital economy and space coming, is not a question anymore. The question's been answered. It's absolutely coming. It's really the pace at which it comes and what kind of operation, what's it going to look like? What's the space actually going to, how are we actually going to interact with it? And I think for a lot of people, that's sort of scary on some level. And again, art is such a nice, safe space to come in through, art and real world experiences. So look, you and I will be having this conversation in 5 years, looking back on what NFTs are and this whole economy and probably laugh, but for now, I think what else could I be doing in this space? I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing than perfecting our products, making it even more accessible, working even more closely with some of these legacy brands to enhance that storytelling aspect, because that's all glorious content. And look, if I'm making something so truly glorious and I believe in it, somebody else will feel the same way. And it's going to be in a really interesting couple of years, kind of quite a good one for us. It's like a little bit of a reset, particularly for a lot of the silly nonsense. So hopefully the media will start looking for better stories and more interesting stories. And you've got some mainstream outlets who are really moving into quite a neutral space, and some a positive space, which is also really helpful because we can't do it alone. You're doing the best you guys can from your point of view, and we are too at Glorious. And there's some great media partners too, and a big educational journey to go on. But I wouldn't be going on it if I didn't fully believe in the space.
Awesome. Well, look, last question for the day. So you've told us inadvertently that you're going to set up an office in Europe. You've told us that you're going to go onto some other chains. What else does the future hold for Glorious?
It's a knuckle down. It's a knuckle down period, and realize that we've got this phenomenal opportunity where we're working with some of the best brands in the world, and to steward that and create magnificent collections and make sure the whole world sees them. Make sure that if you're interacting with us, it's an incredible experience so that you tell your friends about it. We want to see more people with Samsung frames up on their TVs. I think that's actually where you really enjoy our brand. And that technology is amazing. Everyone, we've all been in lockdown. So we know what prime real estate TVs take in our house. We'll sit there. I think something like 75% of Americans are planning a renovation or in the middle of a renovation. And no one loves, renovations more than the TV. So the TV, the fact that it could actually be a place that people could display authentic digital art, an authentic digital masterpiece, which is really a byline of Glorious. Most people don't even know that. And you think of the billions of screens around the world, hotel screens. I mean, imagine one day turning up to my hotel and arriving there and my NFT collection is connected to the wallet on the screen. And there's a beautiful piece of my artwork welcoming me into the room. You know, the opportunity for actually us to normalize and mainstream the display of digital art is incredibly exciting. But again, too, I think these memberships, this idea of creating just the best possible stories and the best possible experiences for people using this technology, that's just incredibly exciting. So yeah, we're in for a wild couple of years, and it's going to be incredible.
That's exciting. That's really exciting. Well, look, I think that brings us to the end of our session today. Tim, thank you so much for your time. I know I've really enjoyed chatting and hearing about the amazing things you guys have done so far and what you're going to do in the future. So look, really interesting time for the NFT space and for Glorious as well. I hope everyone else watching has really enjoyed the session. Tell us what you thought in the comments section below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our next AMA session coming out soon. Thanks.